Hello everyone and welcome to episode 51 of Mad Knitting. My name is Susan, my pronouns are she, her, hers, and you can find me elsewhere online as madtownmama on Ravelry and madtown_mama on Instagram. I am coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin, where I live with my husband and our 2 teenage children, and I love to talk about knitting on the internet, so I decided to create a whole YouTube channel about it, and that was a little over 2 years ago, and I'm still going. It's still fun, so here we are. Today is December the 1st, 2023. I don't do Vlogmas. I know a lot of YouTubers do Vlogmas. That is not my thing, but I am going to talk about holiday knitting today because I do a lot of gift knitting and I have a lot of plans, and I may have bitten off a little more than I can chew, but that's half the fun. So I'm going to talk about it here. I want to start with what I'm wearing though, just because I have a couple things to say about it. I'll get to the sweater in a second, but first I just want to share these sort of drab, plain, very casual clothes are hand-me-downs from my husband and son. I'm a big fan of wearing secondhand clothes. I'm getting up on the piano bench here so you can see the top of these. I love getting hand-me-downs and I love shopping secondhand. And it's really fun when I can get them from the men in my life. So these pants are, I don't remember the brand, but they were kind of on the pricey side. You can see they're kind of like regular khaki pants, but there's a drawstring elastic situation at the top rather than a fly. My husband first got these, he got a couple of pairs, like he got these and then like a khaki colored pair, and dubbed them his dress sweats. And for a while, this is what he was wearing to work every day because he figured they felt like sweatpants, but he could get away with wearing them to work. His workplace is fairly casual, but still. Well, after a while, he came to the conclusion that he didn't like the fit so much. I think on him, they're a little bit small. Turns out on me, the fit is really good. They're so comfortable. They're not, obviously they're looser on me, but I thought that the fit at the top would be all wonky because they're cut for man and I'm not a man, but I don't know. They fit well enough and they're pretty comfy, so I've been wearing them. The shirt I'm wearing is nothing special really. It's just like a baseball raglan style t-shirt, but I had got a bunch of these from my son a few years ago, and he has since gotten to be about 6 feet tall and is too tall for these. And rather than put them in the donation pile, I thought, hey, these look pretty comfy. Maybe I'll just keep them, wear them for running and maybe pajama shirts or whatever. And it seems to have worked out. What's interesting about this is that, like, I am wearing men's clothes, like top to bottom here, and it doesn't, I mean, I don't go out in public terribly often since I work from home, but I don't think anybody would look twice at what I'm wearing, even though I am technically wearing something that is not for my assigned gender. If it was the other way around, I think people's reactions would be much different. And I just find that very interesting. I think that clothing styles that are androgynous tend to be coded a little more masculine than feminine. I'm no expert in this, but I've thought a little bit about it since I've been wearing these clothes that my kid and my husband handed down to me, and I just think that's interesting. Now, the sweater I'm wearing is called Trago. I think I wore this on my very first Mad Knitting episode. It's a cardigan, obviously. The pattern is by Melissa with a last name that's very hard to pronounce. Schwashery, something like that. It's top down, a lot of plain stockinette in the body, pretty simple but appealing texture on the sleeves, and then this textured rib for the really, really wide collar. I think the collar is intended to fold over, sort of like a shawl collar. This one doesn't do that for some reason. but this is one of the most comfortable sweaters I own. It's great for wearing every day. And I think that is because the yarn is so fabulous. I used Blackberry Ridge. I'm just going to show you a close-up of the sleeve while I talk. I used Blackberry Ridge worsted weight. They have a blend with mohair. So there's a little bit of mohair blended with wool, and it's a little bit heavier than their regular worsted weight yarn. And it is dreamy. It is so warm. I've had this for several years and it's held up very well. If I didn't have such a big stash, I would go to the Blackberry Ridge Mill website and order a whole bunch more because I like it so much. They're a local mill. They're based out of Mount Horeb, Wisconsin, which is less than an hour's drive from here. And their website, just be forewarned, I will link it in the description box below. I think all the information in there is up to date and you can order online and everything. But when you go to the website, it looks like it was designed in 1997 and not updated since then. Like it's pretty vintage. It's vintage, shall we say. But their yarn is great. Okay, so did I say this is a special episode about gift knitting? I don't remember. This is a special episode about gift knitting. I am inspired by Stephanie from Edible Thoughts Makes, who has a wonderful YouTube channel. She did a special episode. She has sort of a Maker's Musings series where she does short episodes about special topics. And she did one a few weeks ago about gift knitting and her approach to it. The patterns she likes to use, the kind of items she likes to make. And it was just so lovely. She makes all these things all year round so that when Christmas time rolls around, when most gift giving happens, at least for her and for many of us, that she's prepared. I aspire to that. It never happens. I always end up in a last minute frenzy, not quite getting things done. I don't know why. I think I just get hit with inspiration around mid-November when it gets dark early and it's getting cold. We might see some snow on the ground here and there, and the Christmas lights are out, and it just gets me in the mood to make stuff, and that's when I get hit with all the ideas. I'm not in the mood to knit for Christmas in July. I've learned this about myself. I've accepted it. I roll with it. I consider it to be half the fun. So, Stephanie, maybe one day I will be like you and have things done further ahead of time. But today is not that day. Now, I have actually finished a few gifts already. I showed them in my last episode. That was sweaters for my nieces and socks for my son. But there is so much more that I have coming. So much more. I'm going to start, though, with one that I actually have finished. This is something I finished yesterday, in fact. So today is December the 1st, like I said. So I've got, if I'm looking at strictly Christmas knitting, I've got a little more than 3 weeks to go. So that's good. So this first thing I finished is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. Look at that color work pattern. This is Lumi Light. It is a pattern by Jessica McDonald. I think she's Jessica M Knits on Instagram. She has a YouTube channel that I very much enjoy watching. It's so cool to see her process and hear her talk about, her life living kind of in a rural area and raising animals and stuff. Anyway, this took me a couple of tries to get right, which I'll talk about in a second. I want to say, though, this is a present for, I don't know how much detail I want to go into about who it's for, but someone who saw me wearing another hat that's a Jessica McDonald design. This one's called Ruska. And I was wearing this when I saw this friend of mine, and she admired it. She is a knitter too, actually. And she just said, oh, what a beautiful hat. And, was admiring the color work on it. And she is a person who is very knit worthy, in addition to being a beautiful knitter herself. So I thought, well, maybe I'll make her a hat for Christmas. So I didn't want to just do the same Ruska pattern again. And I'd already bought Lumi Light for some reason, I guess because I liked it so much. So this is what I cast on. Now, the yarn I used meant that was quite a bit different from what she called for. So I had to do some adjustments. She calls for fingering weight yarn and a gauge in the color work of 30 stitches over 4 inches, which is pretty skinny little yarn with pretty skinny little needles. I happened to be at the Sow's Ear, favorite local yarn shop, and saw that they had this sport weight Patagonia organic merino yarn. This particular color purple was in their sale basket. I think it must be a discontinued color. And I thought it was beautiful and it was like 25% off. So I picked up the 2 skeins that were in there and decided that this would be something for this person. But it's sport weight, which means it's quite a bit thicker than the yarn called for. And one of the things about this pattern, this particular pattern, is that this gorgeous color work design is a 20 stitch repeat. So you have to think very carefully about what size you're choosing. Because, you know, if there's like a 5 stitch repeat or even 10 stitch, you can often have a lot of flexibility in choosing different sizes or accommodating a different gauge. But with a 20 stitch, you know, with 20 stitches between each sizes, and fortunately Jessica in her patterns always offers several sizes. Anyway, I did a gauge swatch. I thought that I had picked, you know, I went down a couple of sizes in the pattern and I thought that it was going to work out, but my first try, I got almost done with the color work section and I pulled it over my head and I realized it was like comically oversized. This was not going to work. I took a picture, I posted it on Instagram. I'll put it in here so you can see it. But once I did that, I immediately regretted not having tried it on sooner. Well, that's what I regretted, not having tried it on sooner so that I knew sooner in the process that I needed to start over. So I started over, kept the same needle size because I like the fabric it created, and just cast on a smaller size. And this worked out perfectly. It's still roomy, but it's snug enough that it will keep you warm. I did a nice big brim so that it will cover the ears, because of course in Wisconsin, you need your ears covered. And I may attach like a big white fluffy pom-pom on the top, because I think that would go well with a hat that's got snowflake pattern. The contrasting yarn I used for this one, I used Cascade 220 Sport, a non-superwash yarn that I had a skein of white in my stash left over from something else. In the first version I used something else that was just a little too thin, so it didn't look as good. That was another reason to start over, but I really like how this turned out. One thing to note about this pattern, I would not consider this a beginner-friendly colorwork pattern because there are, okay, I turned this inside out, I'm gonna turn it right side out again. If you look, I don't know how well you can see just from the outside, but there are some parts in this pattern with some pretty long floats, like up here and here. And you're gonna have to figure out how to deal with those. In a hat, it's not as big of a deal because there's not things to snag on your head like you would have in a sweater sleeve or a mitten or something, but I still didn't want really long floats. So I employed ladderback jacquard. And you can see where I did that here. Several short sections in that bottom motif, and then as you're working your way to the top. And I have to say, it worked out beautifully. I love the ladderback jacquard, whatever. I love that technique. There are ways you can catch floats in the back, like twisting the yarns together, that also work, but sometimes those kind of show through. And I just think this looks much, much neater. So that's going to be my method from now on. Other than adjusting for size and gauge, like adjusting the size for the gauge, I also left off some of the chart at the very top, just because since I was using thicker yarn, the hat got to its optimum height before I was done with the colorwork chart. So there was about 5 or 6 rounds to go, and I just eliminated them. I also eliminated the colorwork at the very top of the hat. She has just some single stitches of contrast color that sort of continue to look like snowflakes. I didn't want to deal with that in the decreases. So I went down a needle size to finish the hat since I wasn't doing color work anymore. And I think it turned out great. So I can't wait to give this to her because I think she's going to love it. I've seen her wear this color a lot, so that was really the inspiration in the first place, was that color and the fact that she was admiring the star colorwork pattern. So that's the only finished object I have. Christmas is just over 3 weeks away, and I have quite a few things left to finish, including several things that I have not yet started, but I can do it. I think it'll be fine. I'll show you the one thing that is in progress. The other thing that's in progress. The one thing that's in progress. I say the other. The other as if I had more than one gift in progress. So, I decided to make some mitts for my daughter. The indie gift along sale happens the week of Thanksgiving, so I don't really participate in the indie gift along other than sometimes I buy the patterns on sale, but I think the gist of it is that a whole bunch of designers on Ravelry, this is a Ravelry only thing, there's like 250 or more designers will offer a discount on a certain group of their patterns over the course of the week. And then after that, there is some kind of knit along or make along that people can participate in using those patterns or other patterns by the same designers. It's a little, there's so much with it, it's a little overwhelming, and I don't really do knit alongs unless it's the Yarny X podcast, which I'll talk about in a minute. But anyway, there's this one designer called Erica Heuser, I'm not sure how you say it, who had this pattern on sale. It's called Varia Mitts. She is known for her amazingly beautiful color work. I mean, look at that owl. My daughter loves owls, as do I. I just find them fascinating. There's an Instagram account called Owls of the Day that we both follow, and you can see these amazing videos of owls just doing what owls do. Anyway, I saw this pattern. I thought, okay, I've got to make this for her. And so I bought it, and I got started yesterday. And this is how far I am already. Now, yesterday, I had a 6-hour Zoom meeting. Yes, you heard that right. For my job, one of the things I do for my job is sit on a variety of different like advisory groups or councils or task forces or whatever. And one of them met yesterday for 6 hours via Zoom. They had breaks, but it was still pretty long. And fortunately, I didn't really have to be very engaged for most of it. I was just kind of listening. So I got quite a bit done. I would have gotten even further, in fact, except that I was a good ways through this part. There's like this cuff part of the pattern, and you're actually supposed to use a different contrasting color here, but I didn't really have one that I thought would look good. So anyway, I had gotten somewhere in here and realized that I had my color dominance messed up. I need this dark color to show up more. And I had it flipped so that the light color was dominant, and it just looked bad, y'all. It looked like a mess. It did not look well defined. That's how important color dominance is. So I ripped it back and went back, and I still got quite a bit done. This is the left mitt, by the way. You wouldn't know because I haven't gotten to the thumb yet. But this is what it looks like so far on the front. So this part is the branch, and this is the bottom, the little bottom of the owl tail. I love it. This is so much fun. It takes paying attention. I won't show you the chart because this is a paid pattern. I don't want to give anything away, but the palm is pretty intuitive. You can see this is a repeating pattern here, but the motif on the top of the hand is much more involved. So I have a colored pencil, and I color in every row as I finish it so that I don't lose track of where I am. Speaking of ladder back jacquard, I have employed that technique quite a lot because there are so many long floats, and I will do it sometimes just for 2 rounds before resolving that extra stitch. But I do find that preferable to twisting the yarn in the back. I don't know if I can show it to you without accidentally slipping this off the needles. So I might have to show you later when I have one of these done and can show you the inside, but it's just fun. The yarn I'm using is leftover from another project. This is a teeny tiny gauge, so I'm doing this on size 1 needles with fingering weight yarn. I have Knit Picks palette. This is an extra skein. In the color Finley Heather, which is kind of a perfect gray, like light gray. I don't think there's a color that wouldn't go with this for the most part for color work, and I really like it. And then I have this Periwinkle Sheep Highland something. It's non-superwash, and it's very, very similar to the Knit Picks. It's 2-ply, fingering weight. It's got about the same yardage per weight. I mean, this is 250 yards, I think, for 50 grams, and this is 500 yards for 100 grams. So they work very well together. This is the color Plum. And you can see there's this, sometimes there's this sort of black yarn striped through, like barber pulled through. So you get a little bit of variation in addition to the hand-dyed quality that just works really well, I think. This is left over from the Willa cowl that I made at the very beginning of this year. And I think I'm gonna have a lot of this left over. I guess I can't know for sure, but I will have plenty. Anyway, it's been very fun to work on this. And maybe I will give these to my daughter for her birthday. She is turning 16 in the middle of December. And she will shortly thereafter be getting her driver's license, which is both nerve-wracking and very exciting. She'll be good. She's just about ready. She has 1 more driving lesson with the driving school tomorrow and needs a few more nighttime practice hours. But this time of year, that's like, nighttime's like all the time. So anyway, getting close. So maybe these will be done by her birthday, maybe not. But either way, these are for her. So that's what I have in progress for holiday gifts. Would you like to see what I have not yet even started? I'm going to tell you about the project first that is not optional, that I must do. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you may remember that at the very tail end of last year and into the beginning of this year, I knit most of a sweater for my mom. She had started this sweater, had gotten very frustrated with the mistakes she was making, and just asked me to do it for her. So I knit the body of the sweater, including the neckline and everything. She did the sleeves because they were plain stockinette and easy for her. And that was like a collaborative project, and she's very happy with it. She asked me to knit her another sweater this year. And we both sort of forgot about it, but then a week or two ago, I said, hey, Mom, do you still want me to make you a sweater? Because like all the yarn sales were happening online, so this is a good time for me to get something. And she said yes, and it took a day or so for her to settle on what she wanted. But the yarn came yesterday, and I'm like, need to get going on it. So I'll show you the pattern first. She said she wanted a cardigan with some color work. Then she said, maybe I want cables instead of color work. And then she said, well, maybe I want a pullover. And I find this is all in text. And I finally said, when you've got it narrowed down a little more, let me know. So not too long after that, my mom can be pretty indecisive, but to her credit, she found something she liked, sent me the link, and it was a pattern that I know it's a fairly, I don't want to say what it is. I don't want to say the name out loud because it's a fairly recent release that's very popular and it's a beautiful pattern, but there is some stitching on it, like stitch pattern on it, that looks like it would be a real pain in the butt to do, and I didn't really want to do it. So I said, how about this one instead? This one being Selena. It's from this book, Contrasts, Textured Knitting by Mayu KP. I have made one other sweater from this book. Okay, here's more pictures. Selena is this beautiful top-down design with a lace pattern on the yoke, plain stockinette everywhere else. And that was an important requirement for this sweater for my mom, because the other thing about sweaters for her, if you remember, if you watched back when I was doing that other one for her, she has a curve in her spine. This is probably from osteoporosis. She calls it her dowager's hump, which kind of cracks me up. But anyway, because of that curve, sweaters hang funny on her. They tend to ride up in the back. They tend to pull up at the neck. She doesn't like the way that looks, and she also finds it very uncomfortable. So if she is knitting herself a sweater, or if I'm knitting one for her, she really needs some short rows added to the back to add length just to the back to accommodate that curve in her spine. Which means any sweater I make for her has to be plain in the back. It's okay if there's patterning at the top, because where she needs those short rows is kind of in the middle, like in the middle of her trunk. But there can't be like color work patterning going down the back, all the way down the back body. There can't be cables going all the way down the back, unless the front is plain. Like, I just can't, I mean, I probably could, but I would rather not try to keep track of the same pattern in different places, because short rows will set those, offset those things. So that Selena pattern is perfect because I can do the yoke as written, add short rows once I get to the plain body part. The other thing is that my mom can be fairly sensitive to wool. It's itchy for her. She can tolerate some wool, but we just had to think real carefully about what yarn to use. So I suggested this new yarn from Knit Picks called Woolen Cotton. I haven't tried it, but I'm looking forward to trying it. It's half wool, half cotton. It's DK weight, which is what the pattern calls for. And when we were looking at the colors together, she picked this one called Shawn Heather, which is like a very, very light tan heather. The options in this yarn are almost all like very, very dark, moody colors, which she wasn't interested in. The patterning wouldn't show up, and they just weren't colors she liked. But they have this one, there is an undyed one, and there's also like a lighter gray. But this is like a warmer tan color that she likes. So this arrived yesterday. I need to like wind it up and swatch and do all the things. That's high priority for this weekend, because I don't know if this will get done in time for Christmas, but I'll do my best. And I at least want to get to the point where she can try it on and make sure it fits her right. my dad was laughing the other day when I was talking through this on the phone with my mom, because I was writing down all of her measurements, like how big around she wants the neck and how long she wants the body and how long she wants the sleeves and, you know, which size to make and everything. And I said, I can't guarantee it'll be done by Christmas, but I'll do my best. And my dad could overhear the conversation, and he was laughing because back in 2006, I think, I made him a sweater that he still wears. He wears the heck out of this. He loves the sweater, but I did not get it quite done. I think I was struggling with getting the bottom to look right. The pattern had something that didn't work, so I added ribbing or some other finishing, and I didn't get it done in time for us to open gifts. And what he opened up was a box with a sweater that had needles sticking out of the bottom, and I said, you have to give me that right back so I can finish it. And he thought that was hilarious. So he thinks it will be hilarious if I do the same thing to my mom this year, which might happen. But anyway, I need to get cracking on that. The other projects I have, I'm considering sort of optional because I would like to get them done, but it's not the end of the world if I don't. You may recall that I wanted to make a gnome for someone for their birthday in early November. I didn't get that done. In fact, I ripped out what I had, which was the hat part, because I started with one needle size smaller than I should have and didn't notice till I was all the way done. And honestly, the fabric was just too dense and stiff. I want a hat that will have a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, I want the hat to be able to bend over and flop if I want it to. I don't want it to be like stiff as armor. So I ripped that out and I'm going to make the gnome again. But I think what I'm going to do, so the gnome was going to be for my sister-in-law. And now what I want to do, knit it with the correct needles, and I want to make another one to go with it to give to my brother so that they can have little coordinating gnomes. Because I think that would be delightful. I've made gnomes for my nieces and I've made one for my brother, but I haven't made one for my sister-in-law, so she needs one. So the pattern I'm going to use is Here We Gnome Again. And you see how this one, like his hat like folds down? That's what I want. I don't want it to be so stiff. So the yarn I'm going to use, one rolled away, let me get it. I'm going to do the worsted weight version because I'm already doing enough in tiny little yarn, fingering weight yarn. This was what I had picked originally. So this is what I will use for hers. This is what I will use for his. It's this heathery autumny orange. And I have enough I could do the whole gnome, you know, each gnome I could do the whole thing in one color, but I might, and I don't have to decide this right away till I get the hats done, but I might do the body in this brown. So like hat, and then the body the same color. I don't know yet. And then of course I have just cream for the beard. So that's one idea. Since I've knit this pattern in its entirety before, I made it for someone last year, or like earlier this spring. And since I've already knit that hat again a second time, I'm thinking maybe they'll go faster this time around just because I am familiar with the pattern. Let's hope. So that's one idea. The other thing, and this idea is less solid. I want to make mittens for my son. He will be going to college in the upper Midwest next year, so he will need all the things to keep him warm. I originally bought some yarn at the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival, intending to use that to make him mittens, but I have found something else to use instead. I just haven't settled on a pattern. What I found instead, I didn't really go seeking out mitten yarn since I already had some, but this is, I don't have the label, this is Utopia. This is a special run of yarn milled from the Utopia fiber mill and hand dyed by Knit Circus. And it's called Driftless DK. I think that's what it's called. And it's a mix of rambouillet and a little bit of alpaca. So it is much softer than the yarn I got at Wisconsin Sheep and Wool. And it's essentially the same blue, this dark blue. My son really likes the color blue. And when I saw that they had this blue and this speckled color that has that blue in it, I thought, okay, these have to go together into mittens for my son. The problem is I can't seem to find a pattern that I'm very happy with. This is DK weight yarn, and seems like there are not as many colorwork mitten patterns for this weight of yarn as there would be for fingering weight. So, especially ones that like lean masculine. I could make something up. I could find a colorwork pattern that I think he would like, and I could devise something on my own. That would definitely not get done by Christmas. His birthday's in February, so I could just save it for then. That would be okay. I did narrow it down to a couple of possibilities, but none of them are really screaming to me to make. So this is still sort of percolating, but that's an idea. I've already finished a pair of socks for him for Christmas. So anyway, so those are my holiday knitting plans. Will I get them done? Who knows? Before I leave you, I'm going to insert a clip of two other finished objects that I forgot to mention before. For the first time in years, I participated in an online swap. This was with the YarnyX podcast. I did a swap online one time before, many years ago. It was with a group associated with a designer that I can no longer support, so I'm not going to say anything more about that. But the YarnyX podcast they're an audio podcast, and they have a Ravelry group that's just a really lovely, supportive community of people. One of the members of that group decided to organize a swap, and it's amazing how she put it all together, because there must have just been so many moving parts. But everybody who wanted to participate filled out a Google form with a bunch of questions. Let's see, like including our address and stuff. We knew who we were going to send something to, but we don't know who's sending something to us. Like, I don't know until the package arrived, which I have not opened yet. I didn't know who was sending something to me. But on this discussion thread, every few weeks there would be different question prompts so that we could get to know each other better and get to know things about our swap partner. Things like, do you have food allergies? Do you have other hobbies? What are your favorite colors? Would you be interested in recipes? Whatever. So it was a lot of fun to read through that. It was a lot of fun to put stuff together for my swap partner. And I also made two things for her and made a little video about it before I packaged them up and sent them off. So I'm going to insert that here. This is a short segment to show off a couple of finished objects that I am sending off to my swap partner in the YarnyX gift swap that we are doing this fall. I'm not going to share everything that I'm sending to my swap partner, but I did make two things, and I wanted to show them off here before I package them up and send them in the mail. Today is Monday, November 20, and the package is supposed to be sent off in time to be received by December 1st, and my swap partner may not open the package until December 1st. She might open it earlier, but she might wait. So I'm going to have to wait to insert this segment in whatever episode is coming out around that time. So first of all, the sweater I am wearing is Light Ease. This is a pattern by Alicia Plummer. I knit it this past winter/spring using some deep stash yarn. It's a Barocco something that's been discontinued. I love this sweater. I love It feels so nice. It fits really nicely. I love the color. It's been a fast favorite. Anyway, so for this swap, we were asked to make at least one thing to include in the package. I actually made two things, I guess, because I'm an overachiever. I made one thing that is knitted and one thing that I sewed. So I'm going to start with the knitted object first. It's actually a pair. I made some mitts. I figure you can't go wrong with mitts. They're fast to knit. They're not difficult to get the fit right, and just about anybody can use them. So these are the ones I made. I'm very tempted to make another pair for myself. There's some good lighting, because I love how they feel, and you know, we've entered the chilly season here. So the pattern is called Green Iguana Mitts. It's a pattern by Thea Coleman of Baby Cocktails. The pattern came out a while ago, and I've had it for a long time, but I've never actually made it. The fun part is the cuff. You start with the cuff, and there's a cable lace pattern. I don't know how well it's showing up, but there are sections with double yarn overs. So there is a little, there are holes in it intentionally. I would say this is not a beginner friendly pattern, just because you start with the cuff right off the bat. You're doing a cable pattern just after you join in the round. I actually added one round of no cable crosses just to establish it a little better. You can't really tell when you look at it. It just made it a little more stable and easy to work as I was working up the cuff. But there are a few places in the pattern where you do a double yarn over, which gets really awkward on double pointed needles. I always do small circumference knitting in the round on double points. Now, if you're on magic loop or some other method, those double yarn overs might be a little easier to negotiate. I didn't have a problem with it. It was just a little bit awkward. So you have these double yarn overs, and then on the next round you come and you knit through the back loop, which is another awkward thing. You have to be sure that you don't lose your yarn off the needles. I had to use some pretty pointy needles to make that easier. But the end result just looks really cool, and it has a nice snug fit around the wrist. Another really attractive detail on these mitts is that up the side, so this is how you differentiate between right and left, up the top of the hand on one side, there's just a small ribbed detail. So there's a part where you purl one, knit two, purl one. That continues up the hand and actually up into the ribbing at the very top. The rest of it around the top is just knit one, purl one. But this detail here on the top of the hand just is a nice touch. The thumb is plain stockinette stitch. I added one round of purl at the top so that it wouldn't curl, and also to make it look a little more finished. But I don't think you would have to do that. That was just something I chose to do. So these knit up lickety split. They did not take very much yarn. The yarn I used is 3 Irish Girls Springvale DK. This is something that I have had in my stash for years. I actually had bought 2 skeins originally. I used one skein to make a hat that I wear all the time. And I've just been hanging on to the second skein, waiting for the perfect project. My swap partner listed red as a favorite color, so I thought this seemed perfect. It is 100% superwash yarn, which I think is good for mitts, just because I imagine they can get grubby really quickly if you're, wearing them while you're out and about, or, driving or working at home if it's chilly at home. So that's what I've got. I don't remember the name of the color for this, but it is obviously a bright red. Slightly tonal. You can see a little bit of variegation in the red. But these are the mitts that I made. I used size 5 double point needles. I didn't measure my gauge, but they fit my hands really well. So I think, and I like the feeling of the fabric. It's dense, but not super stiff. And I went down to size 3s just for the ribbing at the top. So those are the mitts that I made. The second thing that I made for my swap partner is a bag. This is not using a pattern. I just made it up in my head. I actually attempted a couple of other bags and I didn't like how they turned out. So this was my 3rd try at least. And it's very simple. It's about 12 inches across, I think. It's about 4 inches deep. And it's about 12 inches high, I think. Maybe more like 10 or 11. There are no pockets. Sometimes I do interior pockets, but sometimes they just don't work out for me very well. One of these days I will start using patterns for bags. I was using my own scrap fabric in Stash, so I sort of had to piece things together, but I really like how the fabrics go together. So I have this is a linen cotton blend that's a little bit heavier than regular quilting cotton. Those of you who are watching who are regular sewers or quilters may recognize this fabric. I am blanking on the company that makes it, but it's obviously very stylized. There are hot pink, irregular polka dots and like dark brown deer wearing glasses. It's just kind of cool. I used some denim, just scrap denim I had left over from some sewing project sometime in my past for the bottom. I think it helps define the bottom of the bag and gives it structure. And then I use that same thing for the handles. The lining is, actually I had to piece together the lining because I liked how this bright pink goes. I'll just turn this inside out. I liked how this goes to the outside, but I didn't have quite enough of it for the entire lining. So I used the gray to piece it at the top. And that's the lining. I used some medium weight interfacing to give the bag some more body because it's a tote, it's not a drawstring bag. It can sit up. Don't know that you can see how it's setting up, but it can sit up here. Let me see if I can get my phone camera. I have like the wonkiest, terrible tripod. Yeah. So you can see when I set it down, it's not like completely standing up, but it has some body. Like you could put, yeah, it has some body and structure. So it's a good sort of medium-sized project bag. You could fit a couple of pairs of socks in here. You could fit a hat or two in here, definitely a shawl project, the beginning of a sweater, or if you were making a very small sweater for a small human, like a baby or a small child. Any of those things would fit very easily in here along with other items that you might need. So these are the handmade items that are going into my Swap Partners package to be sent off this week. Back to the regular episode now. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. It is getting late and I have other things to do, so I'm going to call it. Thank you for watching. See you next time.